Hey guys, in this video I'll be reacting to top 3 photos with disturbing backstories. Mr. Ballen. Let's see what this video is about. Let's go.
Today, I'm going to share with you three progressively more disturbing stories, and at the end of each of them, I'm going to reveal the picture or pictures that are famously associated with them. But before I get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel because that's all I do, and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to make the like button breakfast, but instead of powdered sugar, use baby powder on their French toast. Also, please
Mm-mm.
subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories. August 1945, warfare changed forever when the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. These bombs would devastate the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing over 100,000 people. America's goals in
Mm-mm.
dropping these 2 bombs was to hasten Japan's surrender and end World War II, as well as avoid any further Allied casualties. But America also wanted to showcase to the world, really the Soviet Union, that it had this new, extremely destructive technology at their disposal. So on August 6, 1945, at 8:15 a.m., the crew of the B-29 bomber Enola Gay dropped the first ever wartime atomic bomb over Hiroshima, Japan. At the time, Hiroshima was a bustling regional hub that served as a military communications center, storage depot, and troop gathering area. When the bomb detonated over Hiroshima, immediately there was this flash of boiling light that scorched everything it touched. The blast burned at 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and the 70,000 people that were within 1,600 feet of the initial blast radius were instantly incinerated. After the dust had
No.
settled, 5 square miles of the city were just rubble. The Sumitomo Bank was within that blast radius. That morning before the bomb detonated, an elderly resident of Hiroshima had been sitting on the front steps of the bank waiting for the doors to open. They were clutching their walking stick and they had their other arm against their chest right as the bomb exploded. And when it did, they were one of the 70,000 people that were instantaneously vaporized. This Hiroshima shadow, as it's called, is all that is left of this person. Their shadow remained on the front steps of this bank for over 20 years
Yo.
before they finally removed that section of the stairs and brought it to a museum.
Nah, that's crazy.
In 2008, famous inventor Peter Madsen, along with a former NASA contractor, began what they called the ultimate DIY project in Copenhagen, Denmark. Their plan was to build a rocket ship from scratch and then fly it into space. This project made Madsen and his partner kind of like anti establishment celebrities in Denmark. But by 2014, they still hadn't completed their rocket ship, and in fact, their efforts were stalled because Madsen and his partner had had this really public, nasty falling out, and Madsen had actually left the project and moved literally across the street and set up his own rocket building project with a separate
And
team.
oh,
3 years later, in 2017, a freelance journalist named Kim Val, who was staying in Copenhagen with her boyfriend at the time, heard about the rival rocket ship makers and wanted to do a story about them. In the 4 years Kim had been a freelance reporter, she had traveled to places like Haiti to write about practitioners of voodoo, to Sri Lanka to document the tourism that goes on their former battlefields from their long civil war, and to Cuba to follow the underground network of people bringing TV and internet culture to the people. Kim was fascinated with what she called the undercurrents of rebellion, and here was just such a story literally down the road from where she was staying. She desperately wanted an interview with Madsen, but he was proving to be very difficult to get in touch with, and as months went on and still no luck, she was starting to lose hope that she would ever get to do this story. But on August 10th, 2017, the day before she and her boyfriend were planning to leave Denmark, she got a text message from Madsen saying that not only would he do the interview, but he would do it that night while riding on his homemade submarine. Prior to being known for his rocket building escapades, it was this homemade submarine that really put him on the map of famous inventors. Kim immediately said yes, this is exactly what she was hoping for, and then some. The idea that she got to write from the submarine would only add to the story. Before she left, she asked her boyfriend if he wanted to come along, and he would say that he was really close to wanting to go, but their friends had thrown them this big going away party because they were going to leave the next day. And since Kim was already not going to be there, he told her he would stay with all their friends to make sure they weren't too upset and that she should just go have a good time and that he would see her in a few hours when she
I feel like this is gonna end up badly. Very badly. Let's keep watching.
Got that. Kim leaves their apartment and heads down to the dock to meet Madsen. She and Madsen would get on the homemade submarine at 7 p.m., but before going underneath the water, Madsen thought it'd be funny to drive past their apartment so Kim could wave to her boyfriend and all of her friends that were at this party. And so they drive past the apartment. Kim waves to her boyfriend and all the people at their going away party. Her boyfriend would take a couple pictures of her, and then Kim would go back down into the submarine. Madsen would follow her, close the hatch behind them, and disappear into the ocean. Later that night, when Kim still hadn't returned, Kim's boyfriend started to get worried that something could be wrong. They did have a flight very early the next morning, and so it seemed odd that they wouldn't be back by now. And so he took his bike and he went down to the dock and he just waited for them. And by 1:45 in the morning and still no sign of them, he decides to call the police.
Yeah.
Police launch a search, and all night they're looking and they can't find the submarine. They can't get in touch with Madsen. The next morning, the submarine was spotted near a lighthouse, and one of the boats that was out looking for them saw Madsen climb out of the hatch right as the submarine actually sank into the water. So Madsen's now swimming in the ocean, and the submarine's gone under, and there's no sign of Kim. The boat goes over and picks up Madsen, brings him to shore. Madsen would tell police that he started to notice some ballast issues with the submarine, and he thought it might cause it to sink. And so he took Kim to the surface and dropped her off at a nearby island. He went back down into the submarine to try to fix the issue. He said he couldn't do it, and he was only able to barely escape before the submarine ultimately sank. And if you just go over to that island right over there, you're bound to find Kim. But Kim was never on that island. This is the picture of Kim waving goodbye to her boyfriend and to the goodbye party. Right after this picture was
Hold on. Don't tell me he did something because I feel like he did something. I feel like he did something. Mm-mm.
taken, Kim and Madsen would go down into the submarine. Madsen would offer Kim coffee and cookies, and she would sit down in the control area while Madsen would step away, go into his room, and begin watching videos of women being beheaded on his computer. Shortly after watching those videos, he walked up behind Kim and beheaded her. One
That's
month later, Kim's
crazy.
torso would wash up on a beach, and her head would be discovered in a plastic bag along with a knife. It's unclear why Madsen did this, but he had previously tried to get other women to take a private ride on a submarine with him. Kim was just the
And I also thought that was a bad idea. Listen, you don't know this man. First of all, you gotta go alone. Absolutely not. Negative. Absolutely not. I'm not going nowhere alone with somebody I do not know. With people you do not know, even people that you do know, like people that you do know be out here acting crazy. I hope he rot in prison, honestly, because that's very disgusting. He really thought he's gonna get away with it too, because he was like, yeah, I just trapped her on an island. Like, that don't even make sense. Honestly. Why would you just trap her somewhere that she don't know where she at? Don't make sense, sir. Don't make no sense.
first person to accept. Madsen was given a life sentence. In 1978, 16-year-old Bridget Geiger was waiting outside her home in Ohio for a boy named Jeffrey to take her to prom. She wasn't particularly excited to go to prom with Jeffrey. He was known to be really nervous around girls, and so she figured it was going to be a pretty awkward date, but nobody else had asked her to go, and she really wanted to go to prom, so she said yes. When Jeffrey showed up, she was immediately disappointed. He was wearing this odd ensemble of vest and bow tie, as opposed to the standard tuxedo that she was anticipating him wearing. And so now they weren't going to match. He was also so nervous that he was visibly shaking and couldn't pin her corsage to her dress. And so Bridget's mom had to come out and put the corsage on. After the corsage was on, Bridget's mom would take a couple of very awkward photos of them kind of stiffly standing in front of her house.
No, 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 no. I mean, listen, if you don't want to go to prom with somebody, just go alone. Go alone. You need to force yourself to go with nobody, honestly. Like, mm-mm.
Before they ultimately got in Jeff's car and headed for the prom. When they arrived, Bridget wanted to go on the dance floor to see her other friends to kind of lighten the mood because she was not having a good time with Jeffrey so far. But she did stay with him, and it was clear that Jeffrey hated being at the prom. He hated being around this swarming group of teenagers. Bridget felt kind of bad and said, "Hey, Jeffrey, do you want to go sit down and just grab a bite to eat over at the little food cart they have here?" Jeffrey's very relieved and says, "Yes, I'd love to do that." And the pair leave the dance floor and walk over to the little food court area. As they're about to sit down, Jeffrey pulls the chair out for Bridget, She sits down, he kind of pushes her in like a gentleman, but then instead of sitting down with her, he just walks away without telling her where he's going. Bridget assumed he was just going.
He's giving me suspicious vibe. Like I'm very suspicious of him. The minute he says very nervous, stuff like that. I don't know. Listen, I get it. People get nervous, yes. Some people they get anxious. I get it. I understand. But some people they just be giving you the heebie jeebies, you know what I'm saying? Like it just be giving you the creepy vibe that should be like, nah, like this ain't it. This ain't it. And from what he's saying, I feel like she's feeling like that, but she's just ignoring it. Mm-mm.
Went to the bathroom, but after a really long amount of time had passed, and it was clear he had not just gone to the bathroom, she got up to go look for him. And so she went on the dance floor, and she can't find him in the building, and so she goes outside to see if maybe his car's not there anymore. Maybe he just left. And she sees his car, it's still in the lot. When she turns around to go back into the prom, she sees Jeffrey sitting on a curb just eating McDonald's cheeseburgers. And she goes over to him and she's like, "What are you doing
What?
out here?" And so he told her that he just wanted to step outside and get a couple cheeseburgers and then come back and he would sit with her while she ate, but they wouldn't let him back in. And so he just went and got more cheeseburgers and thought he would wait here until she came outside. And now that she was outside, she couldn't get back in either. So she just says, "Hey, I'd like to just go home." And so Jeffrey is mortified and he tells her, "I'm so sorry. I wanted this to be a nice evening for you. I'm sorry it wasn't." He drives her home. He says goodbye. She walks into her house. He drives off, and that was that. Bridget only saw Jeffrey one more time after that. It was about a week after prom, and Jeffrey actually invited her to come over his house for what he was calling a house party. And Bridget's like, "There's no way this kid's throwing a house party. He can barely stand to be around just me, let alone a crowd of people." But she was polite and said, "Sure, I'd love to come to your house party." She gets there and there's no food, there's no music, there's like three people there. And as soon
No.
as she walks in, all Jeffrey wanted to do was have a seance and communicate with the devil. She was so immediately creeped out by Jeffrey's behavior.
I know he no, sorry, I've been creeped out and I don't know this man. I've been creeped out from the beginning. Since you started telling the story and he was just doing some weird stuff. That I was like red flag. Girl, go home. Just go home at that point.
That after only a couple of minutes, she just turned around and left his house party and did not see him again. Well, until 13 years later when she would read about him in the newspaper. 13 years later, on July 22nd, 1991, Milwaukee, Wisconsin police spot a man named Tracy Edwards running down the road in handcuffs. They run over to him and they say, "What's going on?" And he says that a man was holding him hostage in his apartment, that he threatened to kill me. I was able to overpower him and escape, and here I am. The police go to this apartment that he apparently escaped from and they knock on the door. The door opens and the police are confronted by this tall man who introduces himself as Jeffrey. He tells police this is all a big misunderstanding and that Tracy Edwards is a friend of his and I don't know what's gotten into him. And the police were actually close to believing him. They would even say he was really convincing. But as they're talking to him, one of the officers kind of looks behind Jeffrey into his apartment and he sees on the coffee table what are clearly pictures of dismembered body parts.
Oh
And
no.
so they arrest Jeffrey, and when his apartment was fully searched, a house of horrors is revealed. In addition to photos of body parts, the apartment itself was littered with human remains. There were several human heads in the freezer and the refrigerator, and in his bedroom was a 57-gallon drum containing more dead bodies that were decomposing in
Yo.
chemicals. There was also evidence that suggested Jeffrey was eating these people.
Okay.
Now, Jeffrey.
Okay, now. I've been knowing this boy was weird, or this dude, man, whatever you want to call it, or him. Anyways, he was weird, but you're a cannibal on top of it. Arrest this man. Arrest him. He better rot in prison. Like, I don't want to hear of this man anymore. Like, I'm disgusted.
Lived in a crowded apartment complex, and so other neighbors had complained about this awful smell coming from his room. But he had been able to explain it away and convince everybody that it was just some bad meat. However, the most horrifying revelation about how Jeffrey was able to conceal these horrible crimes he was committing in the middle of a city apartment would come a few days later. Apparently, 2 months before Tracy Edwards had run out of Jeffrey's apartment in handcuffs and flagged those officers down, another boy had left the apartment in handcuffs and was running down the road, and police stopped him. But the boy couldn't really speak. He wasn't able to articulate why he was there or what he was doing. And as police are talking to him, Jeffrey comes running up the road, flags the officers down, and thanks them for finding his boyfriend. They had gotten into a lover's quarrel and that everything was just fine. And so
Oh
the police shrug
no.
it off and say, no problem, we'll even give you a ride back to your apartment. And so they drive the boy and Jeffrey back to Jeffrey's apartment. They watch them go inside and the police leave. But if the police had paid a little bit more attention, they would have seen there was a hole drilled in the back of his head by Jeffrey. He had been pouring acid into this kid's head to try to control him. And that
What?
was why this boy couldn't speak. And as soon as the police let them go back into the apartment, Jeffrey killed the boy because Jeffrey, Bridget's prom date, turned out to be none other than infamous serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, who killed 17 people over a
What? You say what now? Listen, I was thinking, I was like, maybe he's a serial killer. He has to be. But I couldn't think of a last name. The only last name that came to my head was Epstein. But I know Epstein, or at least from what I know, from what we know, he was into like trafficking and stuff like that. But I forgot about this Jeffrey. Yo, no, 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 no.
13-year period. Just days after this picture was taken of
Oh
Jeffrey and Bridget,
no.
right before they headed off to prom together, Jeffrey would kill his first victim and start that 13-year killing spree. Dahmer was ultimately given a life
Mm-mm.
sentence, but was killed by another inmate. So that's going to do it, guys. Let me know what you thought of these.
Yo, this is crazy. People are sick in the head. Like, people are sick. And don't be out trusting everybody either because people just be doing whatever they want. Like, they don't care. There's people out here that just be walking around with mental health issue. They don't get help. And it just gets worse. So, yes, guys, this was the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.